editor is talking about 4 equations that have come up now at this point in history. So we're 100 years before the Christian era with Enoch. And he says there's 4 equations. Okay, equation number 1, there's a split in the divine will. Father wants to become son. So an aging process is recognized that is calling for rejuvenation and rebirth. Okay, the idea that, God has gray hair and gray beard like some people we know. Right? And I'll bet you like to be rejuvenated and be young again, right?
We're working on it. Get my sports car, I'll be all ready to go.
Okay. So the second equation is that God wants to become man. And so the eternal, the immutable, the archetypal, and the universal want to be humanized, to manifest in time and space, to incarnate. So, you want to comment on that?
No, well, yeah. I mean, it's fine. It's the unconscious wants to become conscious. It's the old way of thinking. It's also, the old Torah and the new Torah. It's
in what way is it the old Torah and the new Torah?
The Father and the Son.
Okay, the Father and the Son.
And the idea that one's new and one's old. So there's that. It's missing a lot, but I don't know that I could elaborate more than, because it's leaving out Sophia and so much more.
Could it be? Yeah, obviously, but that's 2,000 years later, though. Really.
Brings Sophia in later, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Who does? Oh, you. Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not talking.
Yeah, but. Does the Father want to come through so that people do understand the secret, the top secret of the adepts, which is that God is within us, and it's us that makes God's place among humans in time and space?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, I don't know either. So let me go on to the other 2 equations, see if that generates anything. So number 3, the amoral wants to become exclusively good. After the separation of the opposites, it can only identify with the good if it becomes human. It takes human incarnation to achieve this. All right, so that's Jesus, and the problem with that was that evil does exist. Evil is a great power. And so early Christians tried the goodness side to be good in every respect, thinking that that would be the solution to their problems. And oh, by the way, about 1000 AD, they started to lose that trust that it was going to be all good. And by the 20th century, by the 16th century, all the myth that was built around that was collapsing because of science. And by the end of the 19th century, people were realizing that, maybe there isn't all good out there. And then we get the 20th century, where people are no longer living by this standard of all goodness, right? Galileo thought he was a good Christian, presumably. Or maybe not, because he got taken up by the Inquisition at a time before Luther broke away.
He probably changed his mind.
Yeah. Okay, so number 4, the unconscious wants to become consciously responsible. Full consciousness of the self requires a particular incarnated human ego, the self's vessel of realization. So basically the equation is grow up. You know, we all have to take responsibility for ourselves and our society.
No, I disagree.
You disagree. What do you think?
Because I don't think any institution or anything has to do with growing up or individuating. Because individuation it has nothing to do with rules or laws or anything.
Well, it has nothing to do with rules or laws, but individuation has to occur in society as well.
Yeah, but I mean, there's
I mean, societies.
My problem is the whole thing. You're starting with a father and a son, and we've left out, the biggest part of the equation.
Which is?
And Sophia, the whole feminine side.
Okay.
But there's also the thing that, are we talking about the father and the son, where the father is actually this flawed demiurge, or are we starting with the highest level of pure, indescribable and untouchable, pure.
Well, presumably God is unchangeable in the Pleroma.
He doesn't want to be a son.
Right? So, yeah, God, okay. So God, but these are four alternative equations. We have to understand that, right?
Right.
So these are four ways of looking at this question. And God, the immutable everything, is in the Pleroma. He's not in time and space, right? And he has no gender, actually. He's both masculine and feminine, right?
Okay, at the highest level.
At
yes.
the highest level.
Yeah.
Okay, except that
Or am I
we've been forgetting about the feminine side since forever, or since since people were making those cute little images of the fat
Oh, yeah, fertile woman.
fertile woman, right? Who, about since about 5,000 BC, we became paternalistic. Why did we become paternalistic? Well, we started to collide with other human society. And when we did, women had things that had to happen around children, and it was the men that were available to go to war. And so they did. And when they did...
Idiots that they were.
Pardon?
Idiots that they were.
Idiots that they were. And not only that, they thought that there was somebody in heaven that was going to take good care of them if they did, right? But, okay, so now we're getting to the point 2,000 years later, or 7,000 years after that, where women are saying, hey, wait a minute, I can think. I have a mind too. I can do lots of things besides have babies. And, well, I mean...
true?
Not initially.
Pardon?
I was always a tomboy. My dad raised me to ride dirt bikes, fix stuff,
Mhm.
flat tires,
Mm-hmm.
shoot guns. I like doing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, but the point is maybe partially that none of us were living past age 20 at the time of Stonehenge, right? At the time of Stonehenge, I mean, the reason people reached puberty when they were 14 is because they were dead by the time they were 20. And, or, if the average life expectancy was 20, then a 30-year-old was way over the hill. And, when I lived in Kodiak, no kidding, there's a mountain next to the harbor in Kodiak, right looks over the naval base there. Now it's a Coast Guard base. But it has a cliff on it, and it's called Old Women Mountain. And when women were 30 years old, they would take them up that hill and throw them off the cliff.
Oh, it's horrible.
Literally. That's why it was called that.
Why? Because they didn't want to take care of them?
Yeah, they're
Could be. I don't know. But
She's over there.
anyway, the Aleuts,
Observation.
Yeah, it probably is.
you know, the Aleutian Indians, the Aleuts, that's what they were doing.
Because they didn't want to care for them, or what? Like, because I would think.
I don't know what the rationale was, but they were literally doing that when they were 30.
Maybe because they couldn't bear children.
Yeah, they couldn't bear more children, and maybe they were a cost to the community, in a community that's in Alaska.
That's why women learn to cook really well.
Yeah, that's why Grandma cooks really well.
That's true, for sure.
Right.
With us, they'll just say,
But then
And
Women-
the guy sits there
women's-
drinking beer, watching a football game.
favorite
Like
women
he's really
started to say, "Now wait a minute, I am useful. I can be useful. You know, I can survive on my own. I don't need to be part of your community."
Is that a whole collective, like a group thing? Like, you know how things become a habit or you
Yeah.
begin to take each other for granted.
Right.
A certain pattern of what you do when you break out, people get very scared, but it's hard to break out of that and change.
Yeah, I forget who
You
the
separate yourselves when it's like down gender. It's one thing in a couple, but
right. It's like the short story "The Lottery." Have you ever read that? Read it in high school,
Yeah.
and I mean it's a frightening.
Shirley Jackson.
Shirley Jackson, yeah. Okay, and so the community, in the lottery, the community stones someone every year, once a year. They just pick someone at random, and they're the one that's going to get stoned that year. And so there's all this buildup and excitement about this celebration, about the ceremony of stoning somebody from the community. And then the woman who's telling the story all of a sudden realizes it's her. Right?
it's all fucking games, so you're watching. So.
Yeah, until it's you. Yeah. And it's something like that, though. It's some, and I do remember other stories of communities that would exclude
Well, they
people
did it
from.
in Tasmania. They,
Yeah.
as you got old, I mean, they were always, I guess they were like, what do you do when you're always moving around? They're
Nomadic?
yeah, they're sort of nomadic. And so when they got old, they just find an old hollowed out tree and stuff an old person in there, and they would just stay there, and they'd move on.
Uh-huh. Well, I mean, obviously it's true that other
Better
nomads. I mean, even
Have you thrown
Over the hill.
Yeah, I think I like that.
I'll take it.
She's over the hill.
people got left behind
Yeah.
by
John was saying
whatever community it was.
if they couldn't keep up, then
Yeah, they couldn't
Or
keep
they
up, and they
were
were holding
dragged
everybody
somewhere.
else back. So they'd give them a gun and a few days' food, and then if they couldn't support themselves, they would get eaten. And I mean, that's what happens right out here in our backyard every day by every type of creature we have. You know, they either survive or they get eaten.
oh, you mean actual
I mean,
crime statistics?
no.
We moved into a
No.
rough neighborhood.
I'm talking about in nature. I mean, I'm talking about in nature.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is nature's way.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I first moved into that house, there was a golf course up above it called Annapolis Golf Club, right? And one day they used the wrong kind of fertilizer or something, and this pond next to the house was poisoned. Well, the pond is a tidal pond, and so the osprey love it because it's only 2 feet deep, but whitefish, flounder and things would get into this pond, and then it would silt in, so it would it wasn't open to the river anymore, right? So these fish would get bigger and bigger and bigger in the pond, right? And so the osprey loved it because it was just, yeah, right. But so anyway, this one day, they were all poisoned, and so there's like 3,000 fish dead along the shores of this pond. And I say, oh my God. And I call up the Department of Natural Resources and I said, you guys got to come in here and truck these things away. This is going to be a public health hazard. And, we've got all this rotten fish around this pond. And he says, oh, don't worry, it'll be gone in a week. And I said, how? And he says, nature will take care of it. And no kidding, in a week it was gone. I mean, gone. And there had to be 3,000 fish.
So they ate the poison fish?
Yeah,
The birds, I guess.
the birds,
The birds?
birds and the foxes.
I guess it killed them, so it wasn't really in their flesh.
That's where the apocalypse started, the concept.
Yeah, I mean, but the point is, in nature, that's what happens. The ones that can't keep up. You see it in the movies about Africa, about the gazelles. And one poor gazelle can't quite keep up, and so that's dinner for the lion, right? And that's nature. And so that was happening in human society. Still is, presumably, in some societies one way or another. If you don't keep up, we're going to leave you behind.
No Social Security, huh?
So, okay.